I was 31 when the whole thing kicked off, living in a one-bedroom rental above a bakery in Fort Worth, Texas. Nothing fancy, just a place that always smelled like cinnamon rolls. I worked as a regional operations analyst for a mid-sized logistics company called Greenway Freight, which sounded like it delivered vegetables but mostly moved truck tires and industrial-sized paper towel rolls across the Midwest. My boss? Karen Delaney. And no, I ain't joking, that was her real name. She was about as subtle as a jackhammer and twice as loud. Hair pulled back so tight you could bounce quarters off her forehead, and a smile that could curdle milk. She wasn't just a micromanager, she was the kind of boss who could smell an unapproved lunch break from 3 cubicles away. Now Karen had this grand idea she called the restructure. That's what she called it in the memo. But let me tell you, it wasn't no restructure. It was a purge. 50 managers. 50. Fired in one day. No warning. No severance. Just escorted out with a cardboard box and a paper cup of dignity. She strutted through the office like a general inspecting the wounded, giving that phony "this is for the greater good" speech. Like we were a family she was saving. Meanwhile, folks were crying in the break room over their last free coffee. Me? I survived. Now, I didn't do anything special. I wasn't sleeping with anyone, wasn't brown-nosing, and sure as hell wasn't in her inner circle. But I'd always flown just low enough under the radar that no one could quite figure out what I actually did, which, in the corporate world, is a kind of superpower. Karen didn't like that. Not one bit. See, firing 50 managers was like a trophy hunt for her. But leaving one guy standing, one she didn't pick, one she couldn't justify firing without triggering an HR investigation, that was a splinter under her thumbnail. And she didn't forget. From that day on, Karen made it her mission to make my life hell. She moved my desk to the office supply closet, claimed it was a temporary hot desk solution. I spent 6 months next to a box of dusty calculators and a stack of Y2K emergency binders. She cut my travel budget, but still expected me to attend regional reviews in person. I once drove to Kansas City on my own dime, stayed in a motel where the water pressure was provided by gravity and good intentions. Then came the fake write-ups. Failure to reply to an email within expected time frame. Inappropriate tone in meeting. Microwave usage without logbook entry. That last one? I wish I was joking. But I'm nothing if not stubborn. I took every hit. Smiled through it. Drank my coffee from a chipped mug that said, "World's okayest employee," and just kept doing the job better than anyone expected. I knew what she was trying to do, push me to quit. But I wasn't giving her the satisfaction. Nope. I had a plan, though at that point it wasn't revenge. Just good OL survival. But revenge? That came later. That came after the ice cream incident. And if you think this part was wild, just wait. So like I said, Karen Delaney was trying to break me one irritation at a time. She couldn't outright fire me without HR sniffing around, something about me being performance solid but culturally aloof. Which I think is corporate for, we don't know what he does, but he's doing it well enough not to risk a lawsuit. Anyway, after surviving the great manager massacre of 22, I became the last holdout in a building full of yes-men and folks on edge. Karen had just about full control now, except for me. And she hated that. She tried all sorts of nonsense. Took away my admin login for no reason, made me sign out a stapler with an actual clipboard, like I was some kind of intern. I took it all in stride. Even started whistling in the morning just to irritate her. Real chipper stuff. Take me home, country roads, mostly. Then one day, the company announced Employee Appreciation Month. Now that, in Karen speak, meant lukewarm bagels in the lobby and exactly 1 tub of Neapolitan ice cream in the break room freezer. I remember it like it was yesterday. Hot as hell outside, air conditioning struggling, and this rock-hard tub of off-brand ice cream sitting there like it owed us something. The ice cream wasn't the issue. The sign next to it was, 1 scoop per person. All usage must be logged. Violation will result in write-up. Logged. For ice cream. I thought it was a joke, until I saw the logbook, a printed-out spreadsheet on a clipboard with columns for name, department, flavor chosen, and scoop size estimate. I swear to you, someone had already filled in 2 ounces vanilla in delicate handwriting. Now I wasn't raised fancy, but even I know that logging your dessert like it's classified military equipment is a bridge too far. I waited till late, about 6:45 p.m., when most folks were gone. I walked into that break room, flipped open the lid, and took 1 heaping scoop of every flavor. All 3. Then I logged it. Jack Carter, Ops, all 3 flavors. Yes, a full damn scoop. Each. Left it right there. I even underlined the word damn. Didn't think much more about it. Until the next morning. Karen called me into her office at 8:03 a.m. on the dot. I walked in with coffee in hand, calm as can be. She had the clipboard in front of her. "This your handwriting, Jack?" she asked, all tight-lipped like she was about to announce a court-martial. "Sure is," I said. Didn't want to short the record-keeping department. She looked at me like I'd keyed her car. "You think this is funny?" "Well, depends. Is it about to be?" That's when she slammed down the first official ice cream misuse incident report. Typed, dated, initialed, a full page. And that's when it hit me, she wasn't just annoyed anymore. She was unraveling. Going full ice cream Stalin over a scoop of strawberry. I walked out of that meeting with a formal reprimand and the best poker face I've ever managed. But deep down? Oh, I was grinning like a possum in a pear tree. See, the more she overreached, the more the office noticed. Even the bootlickers started shifting in their seats. And that, my friend, is when I started to plan. Not to survive, to win. Because you can only push a man so far. And Karen? Well, she just scooped her last straw. After the ice cream incident, things at Greenway Freight started to take on this strange, almost Cold War energy. Karen wouldn't look me in the eye anymore unless she was scowling. The air around my desk thickened. People whispered more. My name started getting mentioned in tones normally reserved for ghosts and upper management. But me? I was cool as iced tea. Now here's something you ought to know. My strength wasn't just staying calm, it was knowing where the bodies were buried. I'd been with Greenway 7 years at that point, and I'd seen 3 CEOs come and go. I'd been through 2 rebrands, a warehouse fire, and that time in 2019 when we accidentally shipped 400 cases of adult diapers to a vape convention in Nashville. And through it all, I kept copies. Notes, records, emails, and spreadsheets. Karen, on the other hand, believed in control through confusion. Every quarter, she'd shuffle the org chart like a Vegas blackjack dealer. No one knew who reported to who, or who was in charge of what, and that's how she liked it. Keep people guessing, and they won't start resisting. But see, I had my own spreadsheet. It was called the Real Map. Color-coded, accurate, quietly updated at home every Friday night with a beer in hand and the soft hum of my bootleg printer, the one I'd smuggled in after she banned personal office supplies for efficiency. I hid it in a fake document shredder that I hollowed out and rewired to work like a closet. Slid that sucker right under my desk. You'd be amazed what you can pull off if you just walk fast and look annoyed. The Real Map tracked everything from who had which project, to what vendor had been stiffed, to how many hours the new regional managers, the ones Karen brought in from her old company, were actually working. Spoiler alert, it wasn't many. It also had a column I titled Karen's Errors Confirmed. I wasn't gonna use it. Not at first. Just liked keeping score. But then she made a mistake. She published her org chart company-wide, and it was wrong. Not just a little wrong. Monumentally wrong. She had one guy reporting to a department that didn't exist anymore and another fellow listed as lead logistics coordinator after he'd resigned 3 months earlier and moved to Montana to build canoes. It was chaos. And that's when I slipped a little anonymous email to Marcy in internal audit. Now Marcy was sharp. Quiet lady, always smelled like peppermint, kept to herself, but had a reputation for surgical audits when she got curious. I attached a screenshot from the Real Map. No signature. Just the subject line. You might want to check this before the next board review. 3 days later, the audit team sent out a fact-check request company-wide. Karen looked like someone had switched her decoff with turpentine. Her tone got shriller. Her heels louder. She called a staff meeting, slammed a whiteboard marker down, and demanded to know who was spreading false records. And wouldn't you know it, the new temp, Carlos, looked right at me and said, "Didn't Jack have a cleaner version of this?" I didn't say a word. Just raised my eyebrows, leaned back in my chair, and said, "Spreadsheets at home, but I could email a copy." She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She just turned an alarming shade of red and ended the meeting early. That was the beginning of the spreadsheet war. And brother, if she thought she could beat me on Excel turf, she was already losing. So there we were, smack in the middle of the spreadsheet war. Me with my rogue org charts and secret printer, Karen with her tyranny of confusion and the cold fury of someone who just realized she couldn't fully control the office. That's when she turned up the heat. First came the PTO games. I had accrued 9 vacation days. 9 honest, hard-earned days I hadn't used since the pandemic. I filed a request to take off 3 of them for my birthday, a little midweek breather to go fishing and eat too much brisket at my buddy's ranch out in Palo Pinto County. Karen sat on the request for a week. Then another. Then she approved it, but with a catch. I'd be on call the whole time. Now in corporate language, on call means you're technically off. But if anything goes wrong, even if a bird sneezes in the warehouse, they expect you to drop your ribs and zoom in like Batman. It ain't real time off. So I declined the compromise. Said if I couldn't be off, I'd just work those days. She smiled like a wolf in a henhouse and said, "Glad to see you're committed to the company's success." Yeah, real heartwarming. So my birthday rolls around. I'm turning 32, still too young to retire, too old to care about cake. I show up to the office just like any other day, already deciding I'd take a long lunch at least. Maybe even splurge on something that wasn't wrapped in foil. At 10:15 a.m., I get a ping from HR. Please stop by at your earliest convenience. Now, most folks get jumpy when HR calls, like you're being summoned to the principal's office. But me? I just grabbed my coffee and strolled over like I owned the joint. Inside was Trina, the HR generalist. Sweet gal, always wore purple and had a soft spot for stray cats. She looked uncomfortable. Jack? Karen asked us to review your behavior logs. I raised an eyebrow. I have behavior logs? She pulled out a folder. Inside were 3 official reprimands from the past 6 months. The ice cream write-up. Disrespectful whistling, I kid you not. And passive-aggressive spreadsheet circulation. That last one? She actually wrote that I had created organizational instability through unsanctioned documentation. Trina didn't even try to sell it. She just slid the papers across the desk like she was passing a bad divorce settlement. Now here's the kicker: Karen had pushed to put me on probation. Probation. For ice cream and whistling. Trina leaned in and whispered, off the record, "I think she's losing it." I nodded. On the record, I'd like to request these be reviewed for accuracy. Then I handed her a USB drive with my own documentation, timestamped, clean, and more thorough than a tax audit during election year. She plugged it in. Halfway through reading, she let out a slow, quiet, "Oh no." Turns out Karen's vendetta was visible in the logs. Time mismatches. Conflicting memos. Meetings I'd never been invited to but got reprimanded for missing. It was a beautiful disaster. And Trina? She started printing. Now, most folks would have let things rest there. Waited for HR to do their thing, maybe lawyered up. But not me. Because that weekend, while eating leftover birthday brisket on my porch, something in me shifted. I wasn't just gonna defend myself anymore. No, sir. I was gonna set the whole chessboard on fire. Because I just realized something: Karen wasn't strong. She was just protected. And I was about to yank the rug out from under her high heels. Now, once Trina at HR saw my counter documentation, the tone in that office changed quicker than a preacher's voice when someone drops a 20 in the collection plate. She didn't say much, but I could tell her eyes had that "this is bigger than I thought" glaze. Still, corporate moves slow. Like molasses in January. I knew I couldn't count on them to do the right thing anytime soon. So I took matters into my own hands. Over the years, I'd built up a little stash I called the whistleblower file. Now I wasn't planning on blowing the whistle originally. I'm not that kind of guy. But I am a guy who notices things. And buddy, I'd noticed plenty under Karen's reign. Nepotism: she'd hired her niece as a consultant, paid her like a surgeon, and the girl couldn't spell logistics. Falsified vendor quotes: she was funneling contracts to this shady little outfit owned by a guy she used to date. And they were charging double for cheap supplies. Ghost employees: at least 3 folks listed in payroll hadn't been seen in the office, on Zoom, or in the land of the living for months. I compiled it all, nice and neat, with screenshots, emails, and even a few voice memos from folks who had left the company quietly after Karen had restructured them right out the door. I encrypted the file, slapped it on a thumb drive labeled 2021 Budget Archive, and mailed it anonymously to the Compliance Division at HQ, which was based in Chicago, far from Karen's reach. Then I waited. Meanwhile, I kept working like nothing was happening. Karen kept sneering at me like I was a mosquito she couldn't quite swat. She made little digs during meetings: "Jack, you probably wouldn't understand this level of planning," or, "Well, not everyone here is qualified to lead, are they?" I just smile and jot something in my notebook. What I didn't tell her was that compliance had already reached out. Quietly. An internal reviewer named Russell Dugan sent me an email from an encrypted address. "We received a package. Your records are extremely thorough. Would you be willing to provide ongoing clarification? I replied that I'd be happy to, as long as it was anonymous and off the record. They agreed. Now around this time, Karen started noticing her power slipping. A few of her golden hires weren't getting fast-tracked anymore. She got denied a discretionary bonus she thought was in the bag. And suddenly, the finance department started asking her for justification memos. Then came the day of the lost login. It was a Wednesday. I remember because I just nuked a sad little frozen burrito for lunch and was watching it spin like a UFO in the microwave when a wave of panic swept across the floor. Karen had lost access to her company email, and her HR permissions, and her internal server login. At first, she blamed IT. Then she tried to barge into Greg's office, head of tech, demanding her access back. Greg, who always looked like he'd rather be fishing, leaned back and said, "Karen, we were instructed to revoke those permissions pending an internal review. That's all I can tell you. You ever seen a full-grown adult try to yell and whisper at the same time?" She stormed off muttering things like miscommunication and temporary glitch, while folks around the office started whispering like it was the first juicy bit of gossip in years. I just sat at my desk, sipped my coffee, and updated my spreadsheet, because I knew what was coming next. And what comes next is part 6, the conference call and the clapback heard round the office. That's when the walls really start closing in on Karen, and I get my chance to say exactly what's been on my mind. Just holler when you want more. I got plenty of story left in the tank. So there we were. Karen, stripped of her login credentials, stomping around like a hornet in heels, trying to act like nothing was wrong. Meanwhile, every employee within earshot was watching her spiral like it was the office Super Bowl. Now, like any corporate villain worth her salt, Karen tried to fake it till she could fix it. She started holding spontaneous alignment huddles. That's Karen speak for surprise meetings where she'd bark vague orders and throw around buzzwords like synergy and disruptive accountability. Nobody knew what she was talking about, but we all nodded like we were trying to keep our jobs cause, well, we were. That Thursday, she sent out an invite for a mandatory department-wide video call. Title was just Clarity and Future Expectations, which, translated from boss essay, meant, I'm about to throw someone under the bus and hope it ain't me. I logged in right on time, with my camera off and coffee in hand, not the work mug either, the one that says, I yell at Excel, in bold letters. The call opens with Karen, standing in front of one of those inspirational posters about teamwork, you know, hands in a circle, someone probably crying. She looked, not great. Hair frazzled, lipstick a little crooked, eyes darting like a possum in headlights. Let's get one thing clear, she started. There have been some malicious rumors and unsubstantiated claims circulating. And I want to say, this is not who we are at Greenway Freight. Now, keep in mind, nobody said a word. Just muted mics and side text flying like wildfire. The chat feature was lighting up with, Is she okay? This is awkward. She about to cry? Then she launched into a PowerPoint she whipped up last minute. White background, black text, all caps. Looked like a ransom note for a motivational speaker. That's when she said something she shouldn't have. She pointed right at the camera, not at anyone specific, just generally, and said, Some people in this department have been undermining leadership, submitting unauthorized reports, even tampering with records. Now, I ain't no lawyer, but that sure sounded like a public accusation. I sipped my coffee, waited, and then Carlos unmuted. Carlos, the temp. The same guy who ratted out my spreadsheet earlier, but only because he thought it'd help. Turns out, Carlos was tired of being treated like a printer with legs. He said, With all due respect, ma'am, some of those reports were accurate. I know because I helped double-check the numbers. Dead silence. Then Carlos added, Also, you told me to delete the vendor logs from Q2. I didn't. They're still backed up. Thought someone might ask about that someday. You ever hear an entire office inhale through Zoom? It sounds like a gasp followed by 1,000 tiny mouse clicks. Karen tried to play it off, stuttered something about confidential reassignments. That's when I leaned forward, turned my camera on, and said, You know, I'm glad we're having this meeting. 'Cause for the last 6 months, I've been wondering when someone in leadership would finally admit we've been running this place like a cruise ship with no captain. So here's my suggestion. If anyone has questions about my work, or the real org chart, I'd be happy to share my records. They're clean, dated, and complete. Karen looked like she'd just swallowed a stapler. No one said a word. Then Russell Dugan, compliance guy from Chicago, chimed in. Actually, Jack, We'd like to schedule a private follow-up with you. And Carlos. Karen? She disappeared from the screen. No goodbye. No, we'll circle back. Just click, gone. Half the office started texting me thank you gifts. Carlos got a full-time offer 2 days later. And me? Well, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was winning. But I still wasn't done. Because I had one last thing to handle. The part no one saw coming. The part that hit Karen where it really hurt. Now, after that conference call, the one where Karen rage quit Zoom like a teenager caught sneaking out, things got quiet. Too quiet. You know that calm before a Texas hailstorm? Where the air goes still, and you just know something's brewing. That's what the office felt like. No more surprise meetings. No snippy emails. Karen stopped showing her face entirely. Her calendar went dark. Her door stayed closed. Which, of course, meant she was scheming. And I knew it was time to bring out the Vegas file. See, a couple years back, we'd had this company retreat in Las Vegas. I put that in quotes because it was really just a boozy vendor schmoo fest that involved more blackjack than brainstorming. I'd gone, mostly for the free hotel and because I wanted to see if middle-aged logistics managers really did karaoke. They do. Badly. Karen was there too. And Buddy, she was different in Vegas. Wore leopard print. Told stories about her wild years at Arizona State. Even told a vendor she was technically VP adjacent, whatever that means. Now most of that trip was just harmless awkwardness. But one night, around 11 p.m., a bunch of us ended up at the hotel bar, and Karen? She got a little too cozy with Dan Sutter, owner of a mid-sized supply company out of Tulsa. Dan supplied warehouse scanners. Normally charged us about $300 per unit. Karen talked him up, batted her lashes, and the next quarter? Suddenly we're paying $570 per unit. That got my attention. So I started digging. Found invoices from before and after the trip. Found Karen had pushed through a vendor priority agreement with Dan's company, signed under some new pilot program she invented. At the time, I flagged it to finance. Nothing came of it. But now, with compliance poking around? Oh, it was time to dust off the Vegas file and show him what real audit bait looks like. I emailed it directly to Russell, the guy from Chicago, along with a note that read, "Remember how Karen mentioned unauthorized reporting? Here's some authorized billing she might have forgotten." Included photos from the trip. One of her and Dan at the roulette table. Another where she's wearing his company lanyard like a necklace. And yes, I'd saved him. Not out of spite, just good record keeping. I'm old-fashioned that way. 3 days later, Russell replied, "This is substantial. We appreciate your continued cooperation. Things are progressing quickly. Now about that final straw. Karen, Groppin, at power like a raccoon holding a shiny object, tried to regain control. She sent an all-staff email, CC'd the C-suite, claiming that malicious internal sabotage had cost the company productivity and morale. She framed it like she was a hero trying to clean house, and the rest of us were just scared of change. She even hinted at terminations pending review. Bad move. Turns out, Russell had already been compiling statements. One of them? From Linda in finance, who caught Karen fudging purchase orders and padding them with consulting fees that went to a dummy LLC, which, surprise, was tied to her cousin. The moment that email hit, Russell forwarded it, with Karen still on copy, and said, "Given your current status under investigation, I would advise you to refrain from mass communications or HR-related implications. Legal review is ongoing." Translation: sit down and shut up. And Buddy, she did. Monday morning, word went around the office. Karen was placed on administrative leave pending outcome of serious internal concerns. She didn't pack her things. She didn't say goodbye. She just vanished. Later, I found out she'd lawyered up. The board was meeting in Chicago that week. No one confirmed what happened behind those doors, but when the dust settled, Karen's name was scrubbed from the leadership site. Her parking spot was reassigned. And Dan Sutter's contract? Terminated. With prejudice. Now, when a storm like Karen Delaney finally blows through, there's always this strange hush afterward. The kind where folks walk a little slower, talk a little softer, like they're still not sure if the tornado's truly gone or just circling back around. But she was gone. For good. Her office sat dark for a week. Then one morning, facilities came in and changed the lock. Just like that. Like erasing a chalk drawing with one clean swipe. What surprised me most? The silence. No company-wide announcement. No explanation. Just a vague email from legal that said, Following internal review, Greenway Freight is making changes to strengthen our leadership and transparency moving forward. Which is HR code for, don't ask questions, just be glad she's gone. Now you might be wondering, what about OL Jack? Did I get a promotion? Did they carry me around the office on their shoulders? Not quite. But I did get a call. From Marcia Hill, the Senior VP of Operations up in Chicago. She's one of those no-nonsense types, voice like gravel, hair like iron. Said she wanted to thank me for my integrity during a difficult period. Told me that my documentation had expedited a necessary transition. Which is bigwig speak for, you saved our butts, son. She offered me a new role, Senior Regional Compliance Analyst. Fancier title. Nice pay bump. Fully remote, too. More importantly, no Karen. I took the job, no hesitation. Carlos? The temp? Got offered a permanent role in inventory analysis, and rumor has it, he's dating Trina from HR now. Small world. As for the real map, I retired it. No need to track chaos once the fire's been put out. I did keep one printed copy, though, laminated and tucked inside the back of my desk drawer. Like a little war medal. But here's the part that sticks with me. A week after Karen vanished, I got one last message. Private. From a burner email account. Subject line. You always thought you were smarter than me. It was short. Just said. Enjoy it while it lasts. You won't always be the hero. No signature. No threats. Just bitterness wrapped in Times New Roman. I stared at that message for a long minute. Then I hit delete, leaned back, and smiled. Because here's the thing. I never wanted to be the hero. I just wanted a quiet life, a decent paycheck, and a boss who didn't act like a Bond villain over copier paper and ice cream. But when you back a guy like me into a corner, the type that watches, remembers, and plays the long game, you better be damn sure your own house is in order. Karen wasn't. And now? She's just a bad memory with a revoked badge and a growing file at corporate legal. So with Karen gone, it was like someone took the lid off a pressure cooker. You could feel it the moment you walked into the office. People stopped whispering, laughed a little louder. Even the coffee started tasting better, though that might have just been Carlos remembering to clean the machine. The first Monday after she was officially gone, I came in early, force of habit. Used to be I did it to avoid her. Now, I just like the calm. Watching the sun filter through the blinds, sipping gas station coffee that somehow still beat what we had in the break room. Trina from HR walked by and gave me a smile that didn't look nervous anymore. Linda from Finance gave me a thumbs up. And someone, no one ever fessed up, left a sticky note on my monitor that just said, Ice Cream King. Yeah, I kept it. The team started to settle into what I'd call functional freedom. No more fear of public shaming over staplers. No more unhinged team vision alignment speeches. People started taking lunch breaks again. You'd hear folks talking about weekend plans instead of spreadsheet errors. Marcia, the VP from Chicago, brought in a new interim manager. Name was Denise, ex-Air Force Logistics, calm as a windless lake. Walked in like she didn't care about office politics or who sat where. Her first order of business? She held a meeting and said, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make order. But I prefer y'all don't hate me in the process. We liked her instantly. Now for me, I was working remote by then, but I kept in touch. The new role gave me a decent bit of autonomy. I still checked in with the crew, still offered help when the systems hiccuped, and yeah, sometimes I sent Carlos memes just to keep morale up. But the best part? I had peace. No more watching my back every time I opened my email. No more wondering if I'd get written up for breathing irregularly near the printer. No more secret record keeping just to stay employed. And that's a funny kind of victory. It ain't loud. No parade. No trophy. Just waking up one morning, realizing you ain't mad anymore. That you can sit on your porch with a cold drink and think, I made it through that storm. And I'm better for it. Now, Karen? Last I heard, she was suing the company for wrongful termination and emotional distress. Tried to claim workplace harassment, which, I'll be honest, almost made me choke on my brisket when I read it. I don't know how that'll play out. Don't care much either. 'Cause her era is over. And folks like her? They always burn bridges they think they'll never need again. Meanwhile, folks like me? We just keep building them. One spreadsheet at a time.